Welcome back to another episode of Ohms Under the Hammer. This is episode 3 in a series where I'm filming the new build process for me building out 4 terraced houses. If you haven't seen the first 2 episodes, I'd highly recommend that you go back and watch those. In episodes 1 and 2, I show the process of demolishing the garages that were previously here, and I talk a bit about percolation tests and discharging some of the conditions. In today's episode, I'll be doing a tour of the site and covering off the foundations and the process of building those foundations, the drainage, and also the retaining walls. I hope you find this episode useful if you're into property development, and I'd really appreciate it if you could put a comment in the comments section below for anything that you'd like me to cover off. So follow me on through. So I'm here at the back of the houses, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the foundations to start with, which are really important when you're doing a new build scheme, obviously because they are the structure in which you'll build your houses off. Now, there are different ways of doing foundations. You can do what's very common is known as a trench foundation or a strip foundation, where you dig a long trench and you fill it up with concrete and you build off of that trench. There's also piling, which is where you dig real large holes down into the ground and pile, and then you use those to essentially build your structure off. Behind me here we have what's called a raft foundation, which is also known as a slab foundation. And we've constructed this. I must say I had a Groundworks team in here that were fantastic. I'm actually going to link them in the description below, DM Groundworks Solutions. The owner is a chap called Dave, and he's fantastic. And he built this perfectly executed raft foundation behind me. But what I wanted to do is just show you a little bit about how it's constructed. So first off, if I just take you in here, if you could come and have a look, what we're standing on here is one big slab. And the way it's constructed is there are 2 layers of A393 rebar, or also known as mesh, for reinforcement. So you have a layer of that on the ground. Underneath that, you actually have a blinding, so a little bit of concrete, just so that that won't drop. And then you get your levels, you have A393, and then you have another layer of A393. So it's 2 of these to create reinforcement, and then this is 250 mil, so it's not very thick in the middle, it's just a slab. But all around the edge, where you can see all of this brickwork, it's actually thicker. So it's 600 mil deep, and that is known as the thickenings, because essentially all of this brickwork around the end is where the load of the houses will be sitting, kind of like a trench foundation, if you like. So we took some imagery, which will come up on the screen now, of the raft foundation prior to us actually pouring the cement, and you should be able to see on the screen the rebar and the thickenings all around the side, and you should be able to see the fact that we had this boom pump here where concrete was put into a boom, and then it was easy for us to use a long tube to fill up the whole sections on the floor with concrete. So that was a real great day when we finished off the foundations. And what we've done now is, after finishing the raft foundation, we've actually built our block upstand and an outer skin of brickwork. And the reason we've done that, if I show you here, you'll see we have an outer skin of brick, and then we have this, which is known as a block upstand. This block is 225 mil, including the mortar, off the ground. And that isn't just by chance, it's done like that specifically for a reason. So what we'll essentially have is 225 mil off the ground is this point here. From the floor, you'll have 150 mil of insulation, or PIR, which is a full insulation, a thick bit of insulation. And on top of that, we'll then have a 75 mil screed. So this floor, the level you'll stand on will actually be right up here. And this will all come up to give you a real flat floor with insulation under the ground. On top of that, you'll have your damp-proof membrane. But this is the basis of which these houses are going to be built off. Now, the reason we've got this block upstand and a brick on the outside is because these houses are actually being constructed on the inner skin using a timber frame system. So we've gone to a timber frame company that build these houses externally in their factory, and it's constructed using 140 mil timber stud with insulation in the stud, and then they have a piece of wood essentially on either side, and then they have a vapor barrier on it, and it comes here to site, and they crane it all and put it all together. And that will actually, the process will actually start at the beginning of July, and we should have these houses up in 3 weeks from when the timber frame comes here. So it's a much, much quicker way of getting houses erected. And actually, most of the new build, the large new build providers, not that I'm comparing myself to any of those established companies, but they tend to use timber frame now, just because of the speed at which they can bring these houses up. And it doesn't take anything away from the look of the house, because you still clad the exterior of the house with brickwork. But internally, you're able to build this thing really quickly, rather than having block and brick and a cavity with lots of insulation in the cavity, and then having to get to first floor level and then running steel beams and putting joists into the steel beams and then getting to first floor and having multiple tradespeople on site, scaffolding going up in stages. With timber frame, it's all done off site. It's then brought in and the houses go up very fast. Then we erect the brickwork externally, and the roof goes on first actually. So that's the way we're building these houses. Now, if you stay tuned to the end of the video, I'll talk to you a little bit about what we're going to do with the timber frame, because we'll actually give you a little bit of a special tour around how these timber frames are being constructed in the factory, and I'm sure you'll be interested in that. Right, so in a second I'm going to talk about the drainage, and I'm going to show you around. There's quite a lot of complicated process to get this drainage sorted on this site, but we have got it almost there and it's pretty much done now. Prior to doing that, I'd just like to mention Dave Mortimer from DM Groundworks Solutions. I've mentioned this company already. Now, to date, in all the time I've been doing projects, construction, building, growing a property portfolio, there's been many people that have let me down. I've had some good people, but I've also had a lot of bad things happen, and all sorts of problems on sites. And Dave has been absolutely brilliant from start to finish. I'm not being paid or sponsored to mention his company in any way. I got multiple quotes for my groundworks. This scheme here was too big for me to handle on my own with the small construction team that I've got, and I really wanted some experts. He's gone absolutely above and beyond. He's one of these people who's got essentially, he's not a control freak, he's perhaps a little bit OCD, but it's brilliant because he keeps his site perfectly clean. He updates you constantly from start to finish, and he knows his stuff inside and out. He's grown up on construction sites, and I really just wanted to give him a shout out because I'm so happy with the service that he's provided here, and I'm going to pop his details, like I said, in the comment section below. So if anyone is South East London, Kent borders, and you're looking to do construction and you need someone who's quality for foundations, that's the business. I really couldn't recommend them enough. Right, let's talk about drainage. Now, on this particular site, one of the conditions was that we needed to provide a drainage strategy to a local authority to show how we were going to safely and sustainably get rid of the surface water, the rainwater and the foul from these 4 houses, and we had to give them a drainage strategy and drainage drawings. And so I employed someone to do that, who provided me with drawings. Now, essentially what that meant was we had to make provision to get rid of that stuff safely and sustainably. Now, in this particular site, kind of in front of me here where I'm standing, there is actually a public sewer, and it runs the whole length of our site, and it's 375 mil wide, and it serves probably lots of properties in this area, and it runs right through our site. It's one of the main reasons why I couldn't actually build more than 4 houses, because you can't build within 3 meters of a public sewer. So we had to keep the houses a little bit away from the sewer. But essentially, what we've had to do here, in terms of surface water and rainwater, we've got all of the drainage running under the ground, and that then comes into what will come up on the screen now, a very large hole in the ground, a mega soakaway, if you like, where we've put 190 crates into the ground. It's known as an attenuation tank, and what that does is it allows all of the rainwater and the surface water from these houses to build up in that storage area, and then from there it runs into what's known as a hydro break. A hydro break, that is in this manhole cover here underground. We fit this hydro break, and the purpose of that is to allow that water to trickle through slowly into the sewer. And essentially it means if we have lots of rain, it's all not just rushing straight into the sewer and overloading the sewer, which they're probably overloaded already. So the attenuation tank allows us to store the water there and slowly let it go into the sewer. So a lot of expense to get that type of drainage in place, but certainly ticks all the boxes from the council's perspective. And then there is the foul. So from all of the toilets and the, from the toilets of these 4 houses, all of that sewage is going to essentially come down. And we were lucky on this site that we actually had, we didn't need to make a direct connection into the sewer. There was already 150 mil clay pipe that was connected into the sewer, and so we connected into that pipe, which then discharges into the sewer. So drainage, pretty much all done. A few little bits and pieces to finalise, but nothing major, and very happy with the progress. Right, let's talk a little bit about services now. So naturally there were, from previous videos you can see there was just 14 garages here. There was no services on this site. So we've had to go to UK Power Networks, who supply electricity in the UK to new build sites, and they are the supplier. And we've got a quote from them to bring a new electricity supply to our 4 houses. They've given us a plan of what to do, where to dig. What we've done is, because we have a Raft Foundation behind us, we've provisioned for that already. We've got our quote, we've paid for it. UK Power Networks won't come to site now to install our electric until the houses are up and we've got our meters on the front of the houses. But we've done all of the groundwork and everything that we need to do. So essentially, there's ducting under the ground, which allows for everything to come in. We're very lucky here actually that UK Power Networks, there is an electricity supply not too far from the boundary of our site. So there's a bit of a dig that UK Power Networks need to do to bring the electricity to the borders of our site. We are then going to dig a large pit in the ground over there near the gates, and then from there it's our responsibility to do the dig and get the services into the house, which we've essentially already provisioned for. So that's electric, and we'll be moving forward with that once the houses are a little bit further ahead. In terms of water, in this location actually we have a different supplier for water and a different supplier for drainage, so we're talking to different providers. But for water, again, we've got our quotes, we've paid for the quotes, and then we have provisioned for the water. So if you follow me through here into the houses, you will see from behind, if I just show you, so we've already run, when you run water supply under a raft, it's a requirement that you have to use a blue ducting. I don't know if you can see that from the video, but this is our 25mm water pipe that is run underneath the raft or in the raft, and then you've got ducting that it's run into to protect it. So in each house, the water supply is already run, and it's essentially going to be under the kitchen units or under the sink, and there'll be a stopcock there. And that is run all the way to the site boundary. If you have a look over there where the gates are, you can see we've left our water pipes there ready for a connection. So again, that's ticked off. Electricity, water, drainage, we're making those provisions. Now, luckily I don't need gas on this site. We've decided to not do gas, not have combi boilers, and instead we're doing air source heat pumps which run from electricity, and we've got cylinders in each property. The air source heat pumps will heat up the cylinders, which will provide hot water. There's underfloor heating on the ground floor, rads on the 2 floors above. We've gone for triple glazed windows, we've gone for better insulation, and we're hoping to get the EPCs to be close to an A, but absolute worst case scenario, there'll be a B, which is great. Behind me here, you can also see that we've got drainage in place. So it's all provisioned and ready to go. Now, the one thing I'm still working on, which a lot of developers forget or leave right to the last minute, and I'm in the process of sorting this out at the moment, is actually bringing internet connection. Because if you think now, if you forget about that as a developer, and then you've built your houses and you try to sell them, these people still need broadband that are going to live here. So you need to provision to get the fibre optic cable to the houses so that people can have internet when they move in. So we're in discussions with Openreach, and we're trying to get new fibre optic brought to the site. And I'll update you on that hopefully in the next video. So I'd like to touch on the retaining walls on this site now. Now, this is my first, I suppose, larger development, 4 houses all in one go. Prior to this, I've done lots of smaller things, and I've built new houses, but they've been smaller scale than this. So you're managing multiple things at the same time. And I suppose with every development, there's things which make your life easier, and then there's other things which can be a pain. On this site, I would say our access wasn't too bad. We've got quite a large site. We've got lots of space to store things. We can have welfare units, and we can store our materials, and there's lots of places to park, and there's lots of good advantages. One of the, I would say, biggest disadvantages of this site was the gardens that the houses were potentially going to have. And so where we are stood right now on this wall is essentially a large set of sliding doors or bifold doors, whatever we decide to go for. And previously here, when you stepped out of these back doors of where our houses were going to be, this was actually soil that had a very large gradient and went all the way up there. And so what we decided to do, because it's quite clear that families that potentially be the people buying these houses want garden space, is that they would have come out and said, well, the garden's not very usable because you're just going up a massive hill. You know, how do children ride bikes, or how do people have barbecues? It's not very friendly. So we decided to try to do our very best to make the garden more practical and usable for our potential buyers of these houses, and that was a lot of work, and it was also very expensive. But I'm quite glad we've done it, and I'm happy with the process, and I wanted to talk you through how we've actually done that. So we had a very large digger here. Off the top of my head, it was either a 14-ton long reach digger, or it might have even been a 20-ton digger, and it sat somewhere over here, and it essentially took with I think 5 or 6 full loads of soil. It took the soil down and got rid of it in the form of muck away to a landfill site, and that allowed us to create these tiers. So what we then had to do, because you can't just take soil away and just leave it, we had to then reinforce that soil from not falling back. So we've created retaining walls. And this has all been designed properly by a structural engineer. We've given him the drawings and he's told us exactly how to do it. Luckily, I have done this retaining wall on a previous project, so we were familiar with it. But what you can see here behind me these are known as Stepock blocks. I'll try and put a link to that in the comment section for anyone that wants to do retaining walls, or you can also use them for basements. But these are kind of interconnecting blocks that you build like a brick wall. You put them all together, and then you essentially, as you're building them, you put rebar into the blocks horizontally and vertically, and you tie the rebar all together, and then you fill up the blocks with concrete, and that creates a reinforced wall that essentially is much stronger than just a standard wall. And so we've done 2 of those. We've done one on this ground floor level where our buyers of the houses will come out, step out onto a lovely patio, and then we've got a second wall further up for some additional garden space where we're probably going to put some astroturf and things like that up there. So just follow me through and I'll show you a couple of things whilst we're doing that. I'll talk to you a little bit about how we constructed the walls, but also just to touch on these staircases. So it's all great tiering the gardens, but then you've got to think how the people can actually get up there. And these are not finished yet, so do bear with me, but we've got reinforced staircases. These have been what's known as dowed into the Stepock block walls. So we have metal rebar going into the walls that way. It's also going in that way. And it's also going down into a foundation in the ground. So these staircases are very sturdy. They can't go anywhere, essentially. They're reinforced. And we've allowed the space underneath to potentially be used for storage of a barbecue or something like that. So we thought about that a little bit. So you've got a staircase for each house. And then if you come up here, I'll show you. Obviously this will all be safe eventually. And if you come up here to this section here, this is the second tier of garden where I said we still need to sort this bit out. But you've got another large Stepock wall constructed. Now behind the Stepock wall, what you've got to think about is there is soil back there, and that soil is leaning on the wall. And when it rains heavily, the soil becomes heavy. So what we've had to do is put a shingle backfill behind the wall and a land drain, which essentially allows the water to come through the back of the wall and come out, which means it won't retain all the water there and become really heavy on the wall. In addition to that, the structural engineer that we're using, and makes a lot of sense, wants us to actually support these walls this way as well. So you can see right now what we're actually doing, and we've just poured a footing for it here, is we'll actually have another wall that runs from that wall here into this new foundation, into this foundation, all dowed in with rebar, and then supports this Stepock wall, just in case it ever moves this way a little bit, it's got further reinforcement. So it's all thought of very cleverly, and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of expense, but it does create much nicer gardens. Otherwise you just have steps or a very large hill in your garden, and that wasn't very practical. I did think about trying to move the houses forward to create some more garden space, but that wasn't liked by the planners, so we had to work with what we got. This was probably the biggest complication on this site, but we're almost there and we've pretty much overcome it. So that's the end of this video, and I'd like to leave you with 2 things. If you enjoyed this video and you've learned anything at all, if you could give me a thumbs up on the like button below, comment or subscribe, or share this video with anyone who's interested in property development. I said that I'd leave a little nugget for the end of the video, and there's 2 things I'd like to mention. Firstly, I'm off to the timber frame manufacturer next week, and I'll be videoing how my panels are actually being built in the factory, so you can see how timber frame is constructed. So stay tuned for that next video. That'll be episode 4. And two, well, I've had quite a few people message me on Instagram. My Instagram is ohms under the hammer. I've had lots of people messaging me saying, can they come and have a look at this site and have a tour? So I've decided that I'm going to do a day where I'll just invite as many of you who want to come as possible to have a look round and ask me questions. So if that's something that's of interest to you, if you can just comment tour in the comment section below, and we'll arrange that date and get that sent out to you. See you in the next video.